Welcome back to our city. I want to thank Danielle from the YMCA for the first segment, and I'm pleased to welcome for the second segment Miss Catherine Craig, who is a caretaker at Boxwood Hall here in the city of Elizabeth. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, you've been on the show before, so...
A while ago, yes.
Yeah, tell us a little about yourself. And you've been at Boxwood Hall for a number of years now.
Yeah, a long time. I don't like to admit how long. I started out as a National Park Service ranger at Sandy Hook and Ellis Island, and as a naturalist. And we also cross-trained with history, and when Boxwood Hall position became open with the state of New Jersey, I said, oh, that sounds like fun. And it mostly is.
Mostly is?
Yeah.
So you live in Boxwood Hall?
Yeah, the top floor is an apartment. But yes, we pay rent.
And you pay rent to the... Oh, that's an interesting... You pay rent to the state?
Yes, sir.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I thought that would be part of your...
Nope.
No, you got to pay... You get... Oh.
Well, they take it right out of your check, so you don't feel it.
So you don't feel... Okay. So for those who... Many of our viewers probably not familiar with Boxwood Hall. It's been there a long time. But so tell us, what is the Boxwood Hall State Historic Site? Boxwood
Hall is the remains of what was an 18-room mansion built about 1750, 1760, so it's 250 years old. It was saved from the Wreckers' Ball by the citizens of Elizabeth back in 1938 and 39. They raised the money to buy it and then gave it to the state of New Jersey. And it's been open as a state historic site since the end of World War II.
So how many rooms are there now?
There are 8 rooms and 2 great big hallways.
So there was 18 rooms?
There were 18 rooms. There were wings on either side. They were torn down when Elizabeth went from being a small town to being a large city in the 1870s.
So the 2 wings, and it was extended vertical, I guess, is the right?
To each side.
The back, to each side.
To each side. Mm-hmm.
And they're all naturally.
They're gone. Yeah, they're gone.
Are there any pictures or remnants of that, or
no? They were built on immediately. The buildings just to the west of us are from the 1870s, which is when the wings came down, and the buildings to the east are a little bit about the same age.
And photography was in its infancy at the time.
Yeah. We have pictures of it after the changes, but not before.
Not before. Now, as you know, one of the things I always say is George Washington had lunch there.
Yes, he did.
On the way to be inaugurated as our first president.
That's correct.
But there are many other famous people who have had lunch there as well.
Well, yeah, Alexander Hamilton.
Or connected to the site.
Yeah, Alexander Hamilton lived there for a little less than a year. When he first came up from the West Indies, he was 15 years old. And he was supposed to stay with the Livingston family at what is now Liberty Hall. They weren't quite ready for him yet, so he had a letter of introduction to Elias Boudinot, who owned the house at that time. And he moved in with them for about 10 months. But he was going to prep school because he was mostly self-educated. He came up from the West Indies. The businessmen down there said this kid deserves an education. They were going to send him to King's College, now Columbia. But there were still some holes in his education, so he went to the prep school, the Academy, which is... The site is on Broad Street in Caldwell Place. It's now called Snyder Academy.
Which eventually turned into Princeton.
No.
No.
No. Princeton was founded by one of the Presbyterian ministers, but he held the boys over on Race Street. So the Academy was a prep school. Princeton was the College of New Jersey, which was separate.
Which was over on Race Street, College of New Jersey.
Right.
So that's where that originally was.
Yep.
And there's no structure left for that.
No, there's a marker on somebody's house, though.
Oh, there is?
Yeah. It's hard to find.
I'll have to go look for that.
I had to look pretty hard to find it, too.
Yeah, because folklore has always been that the College of New Jersey started where Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr went to school.
Yeah, it was on this, the academy where they went to the prep school was a separate entity from the First Presbyterian Church, and it was the minister of the First Presbyterian Church who got the charter for Princeton.
Okay. So, have you seen the play Hamilton since we're...
No, I haven't, not yet.
You have? There's no mention, I've seen it, but there's no mention of him living in Elizabeth at the time.
There never is. Any of the biographies? No.
Well, Ron Chernow mentions his, in the book, which I read, mentions his association with Elias Boudinot ever so briefly, and then to Liberty
Hall. To Liberty Hall.
But it doesn't much talk about Elizabeth in the book.
No, it's a shame.
Yeah. I know, I didn't know he lived there for 10 months. Even I learned something new. So in 1789, when George Washington was on his way to be inaugurated off of Wall Street, which we know as Wall Street today, as the first president, before he boarded the sloop at the foot of the street, he had lunch there with the town's mayor.
Well, it was a committee of Congress. Elias Boudinot had been elected to Congress under the Constitution. And when they knew the president was en route, a committee was formed with members from the House and the Senate to meet the president and escort him to New York City. And whether it was Elias Boudinot said, hey, my house is really close, or they said, guess what, Elias, you're the closest, you lose, that house was chosen. And Washington was there April 23rd, 1789. He had lunch with his aides, with the Committee of Congress, with whatever other dignitaries could squeeze into the house. And then they went down what's now Elizabeth Avenue, because Jersey Street didn't go through at that time, to the water, and then around Staten Island and around Bayonne and to lower New York.
So, as you know, that when Senator Clinton was endorsed by John Corzine, I invited her for lunch.
Yes, you did.
As the first female president. Well, it didn't quite work out that way.
Not yet.
But I saw her in San Francisco at the end of June, and she remembered the conversation.
Oh, cool.
So she indicated to me that when she becomes the president, that she would come back and have lunch. Now, whether that ever happens, I'm going to try and hold it to that.
That would be fun.
That would be fun. So, Boxwood Hall is undergoing an interior facelift.
That's right.
And how did that happen, and what brought that on?
Well, what brought that on was Hurricane Sandy, because there was a young man working up at Liberty State Park. I'm under Liberty State Park. And because the buildings were damaged, they really didn't have a job for him. They brought him down by me. And it turns out that his undergraduate degree was in decorative arts. And he said, that room has Victorian and colonial all mixed up. You have to change. So we moved furniture around. And then we got a donation from Thibault of antique style wallpaper, and then we got really lucky in that we got a legacy left to the city, to the site, and
that's
now,
an anonymous legacy.
No, her name was, oh golly, I always forget it. Shame on me. Claire Hughes Glasgow. She was originally from Elizabeth, moved out years ago, left a very nice estate, and Boxwood Hall got 1/6 of the estate. So then Brian, who can't be here today, like I said, his undergraduate degree is decorative arts, and did a lot of research. So we have purchased enough wallpaper to do the great big hall and 2 other rooms with antique style wallpaper and borders. We've bought fabric that will go for curtains and upholsteries and things like that, and arranged the furnishings so that each room now will tell a story of one point in Boxwood Hall's history. It's tough when you have an old house. You know, do you do it all the way it was when Washington was there, but that ignores the next 200 years of history. So each room will show a slightly different portion in time, going up to when the home was a retirement home for old ladies, which was its last incarnation before it was a site. So this is kind of stage 1, and we'll be going on from there, I hope.
So it wasn't all privately owned at one point?
It was, the last use before it became a historic site was called the Elizabeth Home for Aged Women, and it was run by a trust. And it was where ladies could go to retire, maiden ladies or widows. And it was, I guess, kind of like an assisted living, more or less that. They had their private rooms. And then they moved out in 1938 to the site of the hospice up on DeHart Place. That was the building they moved to. And that's when the building was in danger of being knocked down, and the people of Elizabeth saved it.
So Claire Hughes Glasgow left Elizabeth many years ago?
Yeah, in 1980.
Okay.
And I don't know anything about her, so if anybody knows, give me a call. She apparently had a great admiration for Boxwood Hall. Like I said, I don't know. If you Google her, you get her obit. If you Google, she was widowed twice. If you Google her husband's name, you get her obit. So there's like nothing.
Nothing much
We
more
can't
than
find anything out.
So we don't even know where she lived in Elizabeth?
Nope.
So we tracked down her birth certificate in Elizabeth. I don't know if we've done that.
I haven't done that. That's the
Do we know her age of birth?
No, but we know her date of death, so we could go to Ocean County and find out from there, most likely.
There. Right.
It'd be worth a try.
Worth a try. So the facelift and the whole house. What the facelift is the interior. We do anything with the exterior, the whole house?
The facelift is the interior. We're going to have a historic structures report done with part of this legacy as well to get the whole house up. A lot of people stare because it's bright red, and you know that's not in our minds of what a colonial house would look like. About a month ago, we were down in Trenton going through some old files, and when the house was restored in the 1940s, they took a porch off the back that had been added and found shingles, went all the way down, and found that they were originally stained this red color. So we can back up the red.
You can back up the red.
Yeah.
So it's staying red.
Yes.
So who decided what to do in the rooms? Did Brian work with you?
Oh yeah, I mean that's his thing, and of course we had to get clearance from higher ups in Trenton and clear with them. But once they understood what we were doing in the stories and working with the things that are already in the rooms. The one room we're going for the early 1800s when Jonathan Dayton lived there, because he changed to that room. There's an Adam design mantelpiece and archways that were put in around 1800. So that room will focus on Jonathan Dayton's tenancy. The other two, one we're putting, it's like the brink of the revolution when everybody had to make a choice. Which side are you going to be on? And the dining room.
Some never made it.
Some had it made for them, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in your knowledge, is the Belcher Ogden Mansion, the Bonnell House, which are just down the street, are they in the original location? Or
yes. Oh,
they
yeah.
are.
All three houses are in the original location.
So those houses were, for 1700 America, those houses were very close together.
Yeah, well, they were on the road. You know, if you had a road, you put houses sometimes closer together. Of course, the properties are different too. The Belcher Ogden property went back the other way towards Elizabeth Avenue. Mm-hmm. The Bonnell House went more towards Lafayette Street. So they had huge back areas.
Have those houses, to your best of your knowledge, been shortened at all?
Yeah, the Belcher Ogden house, if you look at it, the far left was rebuilt in the 1960s by Mr. Grassman and Mrs. Kane on the original foundations. Then there are the two additions. If you look at the house, you can see the brickwork changes. And then at one time there was a wing that extended into what used to be the police lot, butting onto Morrell Street. That apparently was taken down in the late 19th or early 20th century because it was in such bad shape.
When do you anticipate the facelift being finished?
Stage one has got to be finished the end of September because we have to then put all the finishing touches on for 4 centuries in a weekend.
Who's doing the work?
We have a great guy coming up the end of the month to do the wallpaper. His name is James Yates. He's coming up from Tennessee. He's done work at the White House. He's done work at the Rutherford B. Hayes house and hanging this antique wallpaper because it has to be done a certain way. And he's so excited to be working in a house this old, because we are older than the White House, that he's cut us a deal on it. And so we're looking forward to that. And some of the other work can be done in-house.
Can you talk about the history? We got a couple of minutes left before we close the show. Why is Boxwood Hall important to the history of Elizabeth and our state?
Well, Boxwood Hall is one of the older houses in Elizabeth. It has seen Elizabeth change. It has connections to so many different parts of history, colonial history, Revolutionary War history, and then smaller offshoots, African American history, because alas, there were people enslaved at Boxwood Hall, and we can prove it. Women's history, how did they go about it? Industrial history, why did the house become smaller as Elizabeth changed from a small town to a big city? The history of immigration, how our neighborhood has changed over the years, the demographics have changed. So it's kind of been in the core, or, you know, been sitting there for 250 years and seen everything. From British soldiers marching by to, you know, the local kids playing soccer in the street.
Catherine, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us on the show, and especially your wealth of knowledge on history and your caretaking for such a treasure in our community through the years. We appreciate all of your efforts.
Well, thank you for your support over the years of Boxwood Hall.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
For Catherine Craig and for Miss Danielle Chiaffi, I'm Chris Bolwage. We'll see you next week on another edition of Our City.